In relation to cell phones, during that critical period of time it takes you to call the police and their actual arrival on the scene, assuming they respond at all, Klein's second law of survival will apply. All the rules, statutes, restraining orders, 911 calls, hand-to-hand combat techniques, aerosol spray mace, or other pseudo-protective measures will never equal the effectiveness of a firearm when faced with an unwarranted and deadly criminal attack. Let me say this again. When faced with an unwarranted and deadly criminal attack, all the rules, the statutes, restraining orders, police calls, hand-to-hand combat techniques, the spray mace, any of these other pseudo-protective measures will never equal the effectiveness of a firearm.
This is Talkin to America. I'm your host, Aaron Zellman. Our subject today is, when is the right time to shoot someone in self-defense? And our guest is Chuck Klein. Chuck, I mentioned the media and their inherent bias against guns and self-preservation. What do you make of this?
Well, you're right about the media per se being very anti-self-defense, and this is a serious problem in the United States today. This powerful force has the ability to, and does, mold public opinion. The question is, why would they be anti-gun? There are a couple of reasons. First off, let's define the media. They are the executives and editors, not necessarily the reporters and other grunts who actually do the work. It is these top-level people, many of whom have lost touch with reality and have been so indoctrinated by their superiors as they work their way up the ladder, they can't relate to the regular guy on the street. In addition, most all media personnel are graduates of American universities, which, as careful study has shown, is overwhelmingly comprised of liberal, read anti-gun, instructors and professors. They teach conflict resolution and other feels-good methods of dealing with persons with whom you have a disagreement. Now, this works fine when the parties are educated and the issue is something mundane such as who's the best baseball player or should the city install cameras on every corner. But when you're dealing with some bozo who's bent on doing you harm, polite conflict resolution is not something he not only doesn't want to hear, but can't comprehend in the first place. My contempt for such foolhardiness is in Klein's fifth law of survival. If you believe that psychological verbiage will enable you to bluff your way out of a dangerous situation, you might be wrong, dead wrong. Super predators, losers with nothing to lose, can't be bluffed. The second reason the media tend to ignore the benefits of armed defense is they all live in safe communities, drive cars that aren't prone to breaking down on some deserted roadway. They conduct all their business in safe neighborhoods, or when covering a news story in a dangerous area, always go in groups. In addition, they run in the same circles of like-educated and employed people. These well-intentioned citizens live in alarmed homes and work in offices that have security guards, conditions that isolate them from the rest of us who are at a much greater risk of being confronted by a violent person.
Chuck, this is fascinating. You mentioned a couple of truisms of Klein's laws of survival. How many are there?
7. I've composed or coined about 7 truisms that apply to surviving self-defense incidents. These and other non-related laws can be found in my book or on the JPFO website, jpfo.org. Click on unpopular speech and then enter Klein in the search box.
Chuck, tell me more about the book and what is in it.
This is a very short book, a booklet, a handbook. It's only 44 pages. It's filled with the information you will need to prepare for and survive lethal force situations. Obviously, in only 44 pages, there's not a lot of extraneous or overly descriptive wording, just the facts in outline form. There is no long-winded narrative or redundancy. I'll try to give a rundown of each chapter and a short description or actual scenario. The first instructive chapter is 2.0, Court Tests, which covers the prudent man rule and how you can become a prudent person. This is important if you were involved in a shooting and the prosecutor or the plaintiff's attorney, if you are sued, can show your background and or actions were not prudent. You might be in a world of hurt. Other subheadings in this chapter cover the duty to retreat. Now, I know what you're thinking. Florida just passed a law saying you don't have to retreat when faced with a deadly threat, and other states are doing it or have done it. There's a lot more to it than that simple statement. Carrying firearms under Chapter 3 begins, as in all chapters, with a statement of purpose. It reads, though it is assumed that the reader is not a novice, inasmuch as he/she has the basic understanding of firearms and their inherent dangers, this chapter is dedicated to safe and prudent carrying of concealed weapons. Again, in this chapter under Section 2, Prerequisites. Regardless of all the rights to carry a concealed firearm, if you can't, in all honesty, kill another person, then you have no business packing a weapon. Brandishing a lethal weapon and being unable, for any reason, to use it could result in that weapon being taken away and used against you to kill you, your spouse, your child, or another innocent person. This worst-case scenario, if you survive, could later be judged your direct or indirect fault, thus costing not only the mental anguish of your foolhardy bravado, but may ensue civil as well as criminal action against you.
Now, Chuck, allow me to interrupt for a moment. That's quite a strong statement. What you're saying is that if someone knows deep down inside that they couldn't take the life of their attacker, then they are better off not keeping a firearm close at hand. Do I understand you correctly?
Exactly. Not only do you have to know how and when, but you must have the mental makeup that allows you to put this training and knowledge into action. Too many people think that saving your own life is a simple matter. It is and it isn't. You might be an excellent shot, fully understand the rules of engagement, but if at the actual moment of truth you hesitate, all that training and knowledge is useless.
Okay, well, go ahead with the outline of the book. I think you are on Chapter 4.
Yes, Chapter 4.0 is a CCW checklist. There are 7 headings covering actions you should get in the habit of when carrying a firearm. An example of one of the headings is, upon arriving at home, under this heading are 5 subheadings. Some of these observations seem kind of simple, but not following them could not only result in your being surprised by an intruder, but you won't be doing much for establishing yourself as a prudent person. The subheadings read, A, does the premise look secure? B, unusual sounds? C, is everyone home that should be? D, being careful not to point your carry weapon in an unsafe direction, place it in its regular, secure location. And E, remove your holster to help retain its shape. Chapter 5.0, Reality of Self-Defense. The purpose of this chapter is to define when lethal force may be deployed by civilians in self-defense scenarios. Nothing in this chapter is to be construed as sanctioning the use of lethal force in violation of any local, state, or federal laws or court decrees.